Good morning, everyone.
I
It's
want to
wonderful to
tell
be
you
with
today
you once
that the way
again.
I've been able to grow my business to
I wasn't sure if that was me echoing or. Deceitful sin and shame, seeds of love, salvation. You know, it's interesting. The central theme to Christianity has always been concepts of sin and evil. And that we hear so much about hell and eternal punishment than we've heard about the divinity of man. So it sort of begs you to ask the question, when you come to church or to a place of spiritual inspiration and or instruction, one would hope that we'd enter in and to hear about our inherent goodness, rather than to come to a point where there's so much emphasis being placed on the concept of sin. Why is so much energy and attention given to that which, quite frankly, is so often used as a tool of oppression, an instrument of control, something that has been used for so long to belittle so many? You know, churches oftentimes use that concept of sin and shame to absolutely shame people rather than to empower individuals. But one thing I'd like for you all to know, that you're at the right place, because today you come for a moment of empowerment, not for a moment of shame and deceitfulness. You know, one would think that when we enter into the moment of spiritual enlightenment, definitely we want to hear about our inherent greatness. So how can the typical worship experience be branded as an experience of sinners, telling people that they were born into sin? You know, a lot of us that are members of former traditional worship experiences, you know, we brought a lot of that baggage with us. We heard for so long that we were sinners. We heard for so long that we were born in sin and that it was an inescapable experience. Well, today I'd like for you just to kind of erase all of that you've heard previously and embrace a new idea about your own inherent goodness. I'd like to begin by talking about a story that I'm sure all of us have heard, that's shared in the book of John. And it's a moment when Jesus was on the Mount of Olives, and the scribes and the Pharisees approached him, and they brought to him a woman whom they said had been caught in the act of adultery. They said, according to the laws of Moses, this woman should be stoned. So they asked him, what say you about this? Now, you know, I have always, even when I was in a traditional worship experience, found this story so curious. If they caught this woman in the act of adultery, well, where was the other party? Was she doing something by herself? Or was she involved with someone else? See, it's so often that when it came to sin, there was no equity. It was all about women primarily being sinful, because throughout the scriptures, they were always the ones being caught. Absolutely. Men could not have any sin. So interesting. Jesus, being someone of such high consciousness and knowingness, as these people were saying all these things about her, the scriptures say he just continued to dribble in the sand. And finally, he looked up, and there was no one there except he and the woman who was accused. And he said to her, woman, where are thou accusers? See, this speaks to the power of silence. It speaks to when you stand in your power, when you are convicted of something that you are not guilty of, how that has a way of just sort of melting away. And so he said to her, those that condemn you are not here, so neither do I condemn you. You know, But prior to all of this, one of the other things he said to all those that were there, listen, if you find such condemnation in this experience, and you are so pure and so self-righteous, cast the first stone. Now, when we hear something like that, it causes us to do some introspection, to kind of examine ourselves. Because quite honestly, I think this is where sin comes in, when we are casting judgment on someone else. Rather than us staying focused upon the things that are happening within our own experience, we always want to look out the window of self and see what's going on in someone else's circumstance, and then make a judgment. Whatever is happening there, if it's not to our liking, then we want to shame them. Realizing that so often that the individual, if they allow you to shame them, that they are weak in consciousness, and they embrace the label that you place upon them. And so often it is a label that someone may carry throughout their lifetime. Words of another. Today I invite you to release any word that someone else has given you other than the word that you accept for yourself. See, we live in a situation where we're surrounded by so many people who are self-righteous. And that's okay if they decide that they want to be that way. But they need to realize that they have no power over you or your circumstance other than that which you allow them to have. So today, when we talk about deceitful sin and shame, I'm talking about taking back your power. Because you cannot sin and be in shame unless you allow it. Unless you decide that you are going to wear someone else's label. Oftentimes, when they talk about sin and shame, they talk about someone who has transgressed. What is transgression? Other than an act against divine law. And who's to say that a divine law has been broken other than you, as it relates to you? So let's be clear. Today is a new moment for us to take a giant step forward in this experience that we call our lives. Today is the day that we say to ourselves, first within the silence of ourselves, that I no longer wish to wear the label of someone else. Now, honestly enough, we wear enough labels with the clothes that we wear. Those we select. But we're not going to wear a label of consciousness other than that one that we select for ourselves. You know, I am a music person, and so often when I get a theme or an idea of something, a song often sort of just comes to mind, and as that song comes to mind, it allows me to develop the idea that I'm going to share. So when I received Dr. Clara's text for this month's theme, and I was sitting there, and as I was reading it, something came to me, and it was this. And I'm sure it's familiar to a lot of you. There was a song once upon a time that was written, Jesus Paid It All. I don't know if you go back into the history of your own church experiences, when from a youngster up, you may have heard that song because the lyrics were just so applicable to today's idea. It went, Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin has left a crimson stain, but he washed it white as snow. You know, and I found it interesting that the writer of the song referred to sin as crimson, that the stain of sin was crimson. In other words, you know, crimson is a dark red color. And if it stains something, that means that it's so difficult to get that stain out. I don't know if you've ever had blood on a garment or some red dye or whatever, and you were trying to wash it. It took forever really to kind of remove the stain out of that garment, because that was the impact of the stain itself. It just absolutely penetrated into the fabric of the garment. Well, the consciousness of sin does the same thing. Once you accept it, it penetrates into the fabric of your consciousness. And once you've allowed it in there, it's so often difficult to get out, so you wear it forever until you learn exactly how to get that rinse that gets rid of it. I said, when he wrote this song and he thought of how sin impacts someone's life, he drew the analogy that it impacts one's life just like it stains one's clothes. Something that is there and is so difficult to remove. But then he goes further in the song and he said, but Jesus washed it white as snow. In other words, there is a remedy. There is a way to get it out. And in our instances, whenever, if ever, you found yourself wearing the cloak of a consciousness of sin, the moment you understand that you can turn to your Christ consciousness, it removes the stain, the impression, the impact of that sin within your life. And therefore, it's no longer a badge that you wear. It's something that you have rid yourself of. It becomes a conscious act, something that you have consciously applied to your circumstance. At some point, someone said that this is not going to control me. Why don't you all just say that for a moment? This will not control me. See, the moment that we fully embrace the concept that man is a divine being, not just a word, but it becomes something that we absolutely embody. When we embody that, we elevate ourselves. We elevate ourselves beyond the concept or the impact of anything that carries the weight of sin. I don't care what you call it, and it can come through a whole multitude of ways. But once you fully embrace the concept that you are divine, that you're able to look beyond the reflection that you see in the mirror, or you're looking at a human being and realize that on the other side of that is something that's sacred, your true self, your divine self. That's the self of yourself that empowers you. And when you embrace that, you can rise above any and all things. It was Paul in a letter that he wrote to the Romans where he said this, but thank God that you who were once the servants of sin, now obey from the heart that doctrine, that form of doctrine that has been delivered to you. Now being made free from sin, you become the servants of righteousness. Once you have freed yourself from the impact of someone else's label, you'll be able to celebrate right thinking, right actions, right living, right ideas. You become, as he said, a servant of righteousness. But that happens only when we have an elevated consciousness. An elevated consciousness lets us go into the rest of our life knowing that we are not bound by anything other than that which we allow ourselves to be bounded by. I'd like to think that I am led, guided, and directed by something that is higher and greater than that which comes from someone else. And I can embrace that I am led, guided, and directed. This is an affirmation that I often use whenever I find myself in need of something to move me from some place that is impacting me or weighing me down. Something that someone else has said, or maybe an idea, or something that I may have done that I know was a mistake that I need to be forgiven of. So often many of us will make mistakes in this great adventure that we call our lives. But when we recognize that we made a mistake, then we forgive ourselves of the mistake that we made. And when we do that with all sincerity, with complete being genuinely concerned about removing ourselves from that situation, we say, I forgive me, and I accept this forgiveness, then you are forgiven. And likewise, as we forgive ourselves, maybe something that we've said, something we've done to someone else, and it caused them some pain and some anguish. Likewise, we need to be forgiven of that. So, when you sincerely forgive yourself and remove yourself from that act, and then embrace something greater, I am led, guided, and directed by something greater than myself. As I forgive myself, I move into a higher place of knowing, acceptance, and forgiveness. It was Eric Butterworth who wrote in his book, The Power Within You. Eric says that the Christ in you is the true light, which lighteth every man that comes into the world, not a sinner. Christ is the true light that lighteth every man that comes into the world. If Christ is the light that lighteth every man that comes into the world, then man could not be born in sin. And we need to understand that. He said, every man is innately good, not evil. Every man is innately good. Every man is a potential Christ, not a transgressor. He stated that Jesus implied very strongly that sin is simply frustration of the divine potential of man. And that what we call evil is simply the concealment of the good. Understand that. Sin is simply frustration of the divine potential of man. You know, we make mistakes constantly and often because we don't understand who and what we are. We make bad choices sometimes because we don't understand who and what we are. Our lives are limited often because we don't quite understand who and what we are. We say things to others that are less than loving because we do not understand who and what we are, because if we understand who and what we are, we'd understand who and what they are. See, it's all about consciousness. So we sin when we become frustrated in our divine potential, not being able to understand the use of the gifts that we've been blessed with. Every day we have an opportunity to bless ourselves with a greater good than we had on the day before. That will not happen unless that is something that we can accept. Unless you accept that every moment you are evolving into a higher plane of consciousness, you will find yourself constantly staying still. So often we look at others and we marvel at how other people are moving forward and so much further in life. They are progressing at a rate much faster and much quicker than so many others. And we wonder how and why. Why is it that my progression is so low, so slow? Well, it's because our progressions are based upon our own places in consciousness. You decide where you are. You decide the pace in which you embrace newness and greatness. You decide how much divinity you're going to allow into your understanding. You, not someone else. You decide whose words are going to impact you and if they will impact you. You know, it's when someone heaps praise upon us, we have the choice to accept it or not. The same is true if someone heaps some sort of negative energy upon us, we have the choice whether or not we are going to accept it. More simply put, freedom, forgiveness, and redemption lies within oneself, not outside of ourselves. Say that once again. Freedom, forgiveness, and redemption lies within oneself, not outside of oneself. You know, a few weeks ago, a client of mine sent me a video, and this was a video of Bishop T.D. Jakes. He was passing the torch of the woman Thou Art Loose leadership to, he's passed it over to his daughter, Dr. Sarah Jakes, or Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts. And as I watched the program, I witnessed Bishop Jakes. He just took his audience through a number of affirmations and acceptances, but they were all about releasing. And that's the concept of Woman Thou Art Loose. There's so much stuff that you need to let go in order for you to embrace your greatness. But you can't let it go unless you know that you have the power to release it. So in taking people through these affirmations, what he was doing was informing them of their ability to let the stuff go that was not providing them the avenue to their greatness, but allowing them to do it through themselves. See, when you make an affirmation, it's your word that is coming through you, and that's why it has the greatest amount of impact upon you. Now, someone might be the leader and they'll throw an idea out, but you're the one to determine, to the extent that you embrace the idea that's being shared and how you embody it, and in the embodiment of it, how you let something go. So in this, he was taking these people, both men and women. You know, the audience was primarily a lot of women, but there were a lot of men there as well. There were husbands, brothers, and others. And likewise, the affirmations were for everyone, because none of us can reach our potential unless we drop the weights that we are carrying on us. Negative energy, ideas that someone else has said to us since we were children, that on some level we still have that and we've never really released it and let it go. And it has denied us the greatness that is inherently ours. You know, we hear about how there is nothing before us but opportunity. We hear how we can walk in the illumined light of spirit. But see, the moment you step in the light, darkness continues to follow you, because there is something that you've not let go of. So in this, he was saying, woman, thou art loose. You are loosing the bounds, the chains that have held you captive for so long, that you might embrace freedom and the greatness and the good that is awaiting you. Now, in principle, it's applicable to any and all things and everything. And that's why in the steps of treatment, release is just so vital and so important. Because unless we let go of the baggage, we're going to continue to weigh ourselves down. You know, when we walk out of this door and go into our next moment, if we are still carrying the same thing that we brought in the door with us, we're going to limit the ability and the place that we're going to be able to go. We're going to limit the distance that we can go, because we're still carrying so much nonsense. You have to say to yourself that today I embrace freedom. Today I am loosing it and letting it go. Say to yourself that I am loosed, I am set free, and I am forgiven. Let's say that. I am loosed, I am set free, and I am forgiven. Now, those words have to go down deep into your subjective level. They have to go to a place where there is nothing that is resisting them, where there is no conflict, but there is complete embrace and understanding and acceptance, because it is in the acceptance that we become empowered. See, therein lies the difference so often in our prayer work, because for a lot of us, so often we say a lot of words, but we're not believing what we say, and we're not anticipating something happening as a result of the words that we are saying. And therefore, the prayers are not impactful. We're just making a lot of noise, saying something that maybe we want to believe, but haven't quite reached the point of complete embracing of the word that we're saying, and therefore believing it with great expectation. You know, when we come into a moment like this, if there's nothing else, and you find that your treatment work and your prayer work and your affirmations, everything is not working, the first that we need to start working on is our unbelief, because there's something there in us that we may not know what it is. There's something there that we may be carrying that we still don't know what it is. It's been hanging on to us for so long, it's become a part of us, and now we're unable to identify what it is. But it's there, and it's acting as a barrier. Today we say what is known and unknown, seen and unseen. I release it all, and I let it go, that even greater good might become my experience. See, it's a word like that that you have to plant into your own consciousness. Just as a farmer, when he plants a seed, he needs to put some fertilizer on that seed to kind of help it grow. The seed has everything in it for the fulfillment of the idea that it contains, but sometimes that seed needs a little help. And thus he fertilizes it. And that's what you are doing to your consciousness, your affirmations. You are fertilizing it. Sometimes it needs a little help because what it's been carrying for so long is heavy. And you need a way to pry it loose and let it go. There are barriers. Some we've made, some others have made. Ours is to persevere our way through it and to know that we are empowered to do just that. So forget about sin. Forget about shame. Say to yourself, I'm planting seeds of love for my own salvation because my expectation is greater good is within me. You know, I love it when Paul was approached and he said, listen, he said, I am fully persuaded that God is able to do even more abundantly than that which he has committed unto me. Now, you know that takes a great deal of faith when you reach that level of consciousness. I am fully persuaded. I don't care what you say. I don't care what I see. I don't care what comes against me. I am completely convinced that the greatness of God will still come through. And I will be champion over this experience that I call my life. I am no longer giving my power or control to instances and individuals and circumstances outside of myself. Today is the day that I take back control. As you walk through those doors today, as you leave this place going to your next destination, you say to yourself, today's the day that I'm taking back control. Forget about the appearances. Forget about the impressions. Forget about what it is that I'm hearing on the radio. Forget about what it is that I'm seeing on television. Forget about what it is that my neighbors are saying. Today is the day that I am taking back control. You know, we're in a political season right now, and God, I'll be so happy when these next 2 weeks are over and we get beyond these midterms and these folk can stop spewing all this negative stuff. I'll be so happy. But you know, as we sit there, we're not realizing that we are absorbing so much stuff. And then we begin to personalize it. You know, the moment they talk about voter suppression, we're saying they're suppressing my vote. Ain't nobody suppressing your vote. But we'll embody that and we'll say that that's what they're doing. You know, they're doing this because we're black. No, No. People are doing what they're doing. They're doing what they're doing. We need to do what we do. Okay? We need to do what we do. And what we do is we constantly reinforce within our own understanding, within our own consciousness, within our own mind, that we are a divine being, that we are anointed by God, that we are empowered by the Spirit, and that our pathways are filled with light and with love. And we move along in this great adventure that we call our lives, one with God. So when we say that right where I am, God is, that's not a cliche. That's something that I understand. I understand that I live, move, and have my being in him. And therefore, when I say right where I am, God is, that's the reality of what it is that I'm talking about. Right where I am today, tomorrow, next week, next year, anytime. God is right where I am. And where God is, there is no sin. There is no shame. There is no deceitfulness. Everything that will come to kind of limit my adventure in life, that kind of hold me back, it's eradicated because I'm empowered to move through it. My expectation is even greater good, greater than that which I'm experiencing now will be that which defines me because that is what's coming to me. That's my expectation. I don't know about you, but that's my expectation. I'm not expecting more doom and gloom. I'm expecting more abundance. I'm expecting greater health. I'm expecting greater love. I'm expecting greater happiness. I'm expecting greater fulfillment. And since those are the things that I'm expecting, those are the things that I shall receive. Folks, that's divine law. I shall receive. See, it's time now to reach beyond the moment and obtain a greater good. It's time to consciously move into the vibration of happiness, to move into the vibration of love, to move into a vibration of peace and abundance. And as you move into that place, you begin to feel what it is that you are declaring. Close your eyes and feel it each time you say it. Pause for a moment. Stop everything that you're doing for a moment and embrace more of your God self. And in doing that, you embrace more empowerment. You embrace more of the good that is rightfully yours. Know that as you do that, even more and greater good becomes and defines your experience. Peace and blessings to you this morning. Let us all take a moment. As we take it here, I invite those of you who are a part of this experience virtually to join with us in taking a moment. Just calm wherever you are and just become receptive for a moment to the Christ within you. And as I say, become receptive, I want you to absolutely to feel the presence of God right where you are. Whether you are sitting here in the sanctuary, whether you are sitting at home, whether you're sitting in a car, in a park somewhere, wherever. But become receptive to the Christ within you. And just close your eyes in this moment of calmness and take a breath of relaxation. And as I take this breath, I feel the presence of God right where I am. And I know that it is flowing through me as it is flowing through all of us. But as it flows, it is revealing to us in this moment the knowledge that we are one. As I feel this God presence, as I accept this God energy, as I hear the sounds of spirit all around me, I know without doubt that I live, move, and have my being in God. And because I do that, and because I understand that, I embrace more love. And I want you to do that, just to embrace more love. I embrace greater health. And I want you to do that. I want you to embrace greater health. If there has been a challenge, I want you just to speak the word of divine restoration throughout your being. Divine restoration. And when you say that, just know with me that the presence of God is moving throughout the totality of you, healing and renewing as it moves through your being, restoring. And that restoration is taking place now. I embrace more happiness. And I invite you to do the same, to embrace greater happiness, to sense what it feels like to be much more happier than you've been, to let go of any and all of those dark moments that are denying that, because this is your time of being in power. and that I receive good abundantly. And I want you just to allow that word to ring within your own consciousness, that I receive good abundantly. And no, good takes many forms. And therefore, as you say that you receive it, have an attitude of expectancy. Don't try and define how it's going to come or to whom it's going to come through, but just be open and receptive to knowing that it is coming and that you receive it. And just have a sense of gratitude. Allow that just to swell up within you. So for all of this that is happening in this moment, and for so much more, to know that the energy of God has gone before us in the rest of our day and brings to us greater enlightenment, greater fulfillment, greater good. Let us just know for all of this and so much more that we are eternally grateful. Empowered to release this word, to give it life that it may live as spoken. That's what we do. And knowing that we are one with God, we decree, and so it is. And know in doing that, it shall be done. And so it is.